Hi everyone, we're starting off strong with an overview of the pattern pieces. The dress is lined, so we have the shell parts in linen and the lining parts in cotton. You could totally skip the lining if your fabric is opaque enough, or maybe, I don't know, you want to see through dress. In the middle, I have the bias tape that I have cut in the same linen fabric, but you can use already made bias tape if you like. And don't forget to make the notches and mark the center of your front and back parts. Let's start with the bust art, which I have drawn on my shell fabric as well as on my lining. I'm going to hand base my dots. And I sew them. And then I press them down. So at this point, this is what I have. From left to right, we have the front shell lining, then the back lining shell. I will finish these edges. I will now sew the back parts together. I lay my shell pieces right sides together and I pin. Upper notch till the bottom of the dress. I do this for both the shell and the lining. I press the seam allowances open and notice that I press down all the way to the top. Now I lay my front and my back parts together and I sew on the sides and at the shoulders. You do this for both the shell and the lining. So on the table I have the shell, right side of the fabric facing up, and the lining is turned inside out, so the wrong side is visible. Now I insert my lining in the shell so that the wrong sides are touching. I pin the two layers together at neck and armholes. It's going to look like this. At the back, this is how I did it. Now I sew the neck and armholes together, respecting 1 centimeter of seam allowance. For the back opening, I change the presser foot and I top stitch the layers together. So I have the bias strips before me. I'm going to press them to create my bias tape. I'm going to take one strip and connect the two ends together to create a loop, respecting 1 centimeter of seam allowance. I press down. Then I pin a first bias to the armhole. The fabrics are right sides together. Be careful to not pull on the bias too much because since bias is stretchy, if you pull on it while pinning, it's going to be bigger than the armhole. Then you'll be thinking that the measurements don't correspond, but don't worry, they do. I sew respecting 1 centimeter of seam allowance. This is the result. So here I used some pins to keep the bias away from the armhole because I'm going to trim my seam allowance You want to cut like half or 2/3 of it. Be careful, control your scissors and go slow. Once it's trimmed, I fold the bias so as to have it inside the armhole on the lining side, and that way it's not going to be visible on the right side of the fabric. I pin. And I top stitch. And this is the result. I'm going to fold my strip in two to find its center. And I'll match that center with the center front of the neckline. I pin the binding. I still respecting 1 centimeter of seam allowance. I'm not touching the ties yet. I trim the seam allowance carefully. Once it's trimmed, I fold the bias so as to have it on the lining side. I top stitch. Once it's done, I'm going to take care of the ties. At the end, I fold to create small hems. And then I sew. And this is what it looks like. There is a hem allowance indicated on the pattern, but before you go and just follow the hem allowance I picked, you really want to try the dress on, test the hems, and pick the length that you prefer. Once you've decided on the length, I recommend that you hem the shell fabric first. For this project, I actually made a double fold hem, which I don't find necessary. Rather, you can finish the edges of both the lining and the shell. For the shell, you make a 1-fold hem, you stitch by hand, and then depending on this first hem, you hem the lining so that its length goes down to somewhere in the hem allowance of the shell. And that's it, the dress is done. So this dress is one version of 4 summer dresses. It's the same fit, mini dress, slight A-line, woven fabric, all slip-on, so we have no sophisticated nor difficult closure systems here. So again, same fit, but with variations at the top parts. And it's going to be sort of easy to shorten them into summer tops if that's your jam. If you make one of these dresses, use the hashtag that I'm showing here and tag me on social. And that's it. Take care and see you soon for another sewing project. Kiss!